The topic of today's discussion is workflow rules. And workflow rules is about action. So that's why I found using an action figure is relevant for this topic. Our agenda is what are workflow rules, how to create them, then we'll look at limitations, then I have classwork. Once again, for the maximum effectiveness of this class, make sure to have an open dev org where you will follow my directions, and second is make sure to do the classwork. So let's imagine a record is being created or it's being edited. Okay, let's imagine a certain object, and that object has a record that is being created or edited, and the workflow rule has certain criteria on that object, and the criteria evaluates to either true or false. If the criteria evaluates to false, the record is saved without any changes. But if the criteria evaluates to true, certain actions happen. Soon you will find out what are those actions. If the criteria evaluates to true, certain actions happen. Soon I will show you what those actions can be. There are 5 of them. And the actions can happen either immediately or in a delayed fashion after a certain amount of time. Let's jump in and create a workflow rule. It'll be a big deal alert. So let's go in and get our hands dirty. So I'm logging into a Salesforce org, and let's imagine I'm creating a workflow rule for the account object. So here I'm typing in workflow rule, right in setup, I'm in the classic. Okay, let's create a new rule. The object, right? I want my workflow rule on the account object. Click next. I'm on step 2. I gotta give the workflow rule a name. Let's let's call the workflow rule big deal alert. Email VP sales of a pending big deal. Here we have to indicate when do we want this workflow rule to evaluate. When the record is created, and every time it's edited. So if any field on the record is edited, the workflow rule kicks in. Or the workflow rule kicks in only when the relevant field is edited. I understand this part, this evaluation criteria part is a bit complicated, but bear with me, I will go into more detail and explain it better very soon. Let's just pick the first one for now, the most simple. We only want this workflow rule to evaluate when the record is created. This is a big deal alert, and we want to notify our VP of sales of a pending big deal when the annual revenue of the account is bigger than $5 million. Is greater or equal to $5 million. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 types of workflow actions, immediate and time dependent, which is like delayed. And if we look at the list of actions, we can either create a task, send an email alert, update a field, an outbound message, or we can select an existing action. We don't have any existing actions, so we only have 5 types of actions we can choose from. And this is a big deal alert. This is about sending out an email. Send an email to VP of sales. I gotta pick a template of the email. Let's just take anything. Doesn't matter. Who should the email be sent to? Here I choose the recipient. Let's imagine I'm the VP of sales. I can choose some other people. So it's basically someone outside this org. You can put in, yeah. Okay, click save. Alright, so I have an immediate action. Let's click done. Okay, our workflow rule is ready, but one more thing remaining for it to be functional. Do you know what it is? Yes, we have to activate it. Alright, it's active. Our big deal alert is active. It will email VP of sales if we have a big account. And the criteria is that the email is sent out when the annual revenue of an account is greater than or equal to $5 million. And this workflow rule is on the account object, and it's evaluated only when the record is created, right? So if you say you created a record for $4 million, and then if you edit it and make it $5 million, this workflow rule would not kick in. So let's test our workflow rule. Let's create an account with a revenue of $5 million. Big account. And let's give it 1, 2, 3. Let's click save. Account is saved. Bang! I got an email. Let's look at it. Okay, here's the email that Salesforce just sent me. So I just used a random template, so this is why just ignore the contents of it, but we can see that email has been sent. It works. As you can see, it was a pretty easy setup, right? Let's go back and look at our workflow rule. Workflow rule. All we had to do is just type in workflow rule, create new, choose the object we want the workflow rule on, give it a name, and indicate when we want the workflow rule to be evaluated and what are the fields that evaluate the workflow rule. So let's look at our big deal alert, and I would like to explain you one thing that I promised to come back to. Right now, this workflow rule only evaluates when a record is created. So if I go back to account, and let's say I have another account, and let's say this account has a revenue of $4 million. And if I make this $10 million, do you think an email would be sent? Do you think this workflow rule would kick in? It would not, because this workflow rule only evaluates when the record is created. But if we want this workflow rule to evaluate when the record is being edited, we have to choose one of the following two options. Let's choose this option first. Create it every time it's edited. So here's my inbox. We said this workflow rule evaluates every time a record is created and every time it's edited. If I make this 11 million and save it, do you think I would get an email or not? I would, right? Because a record has been edited and it meets the criteria. Let's test it. 11 million, bang, I got an email. But so I added the annual revenue field. What if I edit a different field, like the description field, and I say the description is, this is a super big account. If I save this field, do you think I would get an email or not? I will get an email because the record is being edited, and that's what the criteria is. Okay, let's choose a different option. The third one. I created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. I'm saving it. Let's say I have a website field for this account and I added to this field. Given the evaluation criteria we just put in, if I save this change, do you think an email will go out? No, because this field is not relevant, right? You see, there is no email. But if I change this field, make it 9 million, would an email come out? No, because it already met the criteria. So that's why, and we already know that this is a big deal. So there was no need to send the email. But let's say it was 4 million. And now this account's revenue is actually 7 million. Would an email come out? Yes. So that's why the importance here is anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria, right? So if we already had $9 million revenue and we edit it to be $10 million, it already meets criteria, so this would not evaluate to true. But if it goes from 4 million to 5 million, it subsequently meets criteria and the workflow rule evaluates to true. Alright, my friends, I think you guys understand the difference between created, and every time it's edited, and the third one, created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. If you have any questions on these items still, make sure to leave a comment. Now you know all about evaluation criteria in workflow rules. For our big deal alert, which evaluation criteria should we use? I will leave it up to you to decide and play around and see for yourself. Let's jump to the next section. The next section is about timing of actions. We can have actions that are immediate or time dependent, which are just actions in the future. And the type of actions that immediate and time dependent actions can do are the same. They can send an email, you can update a field, you can create a task, you can send an outbound message. Basically, imagine we're creating a case. In 1 hour, a case is updated, and a case updated in 2 hours, and in 4 hours, an email is sent. These are examples of time-dependent actions. For our big deal alert, what time-dependent actions should we use? What would make sense? Think about it for yourself and play around and discover. Although workflow rules are powerful, they can send an email, update a field, create a task, or send an outbound message. There are certain limitations, and there are 5 of them. First, they cannot create records. You can only update related records if they have a master detail relationship. Also, if you have 5 workflow rules on an object, you cannot control their order of execution. Even if you have 2 workflow rules on say on an account, you cannot control which of them fires first. Also, workflow rules cannot affect more than one object, even if they're related. So this is kind of related to point number 2. Okay, I said there were 5, actually 4 limitations. Here is Classwork for you. Imagine an opportunity is lost. How would you create a task for yourself to research why the opportunity was lost? How would a workflow rule help you create a task for yourself? Secondly, 5 days after the opportunity is lost, update the description field on it. And third, if you wanted the workflow rule to fire only when the opportunity is created, what would you do? Which evaluation criteria would you pick? Play around with it, okay? Okay, that's it for our class on workflow rules. And my action figure has a question for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and make sure to subscribe to my channel. Lots of great things coming up.